Okay, today we're going to go over the model C# authentication client for CloudCard. This video is going to be a little bit rough, and it will serve as the initial documentation and kind of reference. Going forward, we'll get some folks in to based on this video, update the documentation both in the GitHub repo as we look. Here's the README, which is completely empty. We'll get that updated, and we'll get probably a better video put together. Now, one note of disclaimer: prior to this week or this project, I had not even written "Hello World" in C#. So take my code with a grain of salt, but I do know the CloudCard API inside and out, and so this should at least give you a good example of how to interact with that API via C#, and hopefully my code will show you how to write your better code, which will be better C#, I'm sure. So let's jump into what we're looking at here in this project. First off, let me just run it and show you how it works. Okay, the goal of this project is to create users, update users, and authenticate users within CloudCard via an external C# client. Okay, so create users, update users, and authenticate users via an external C# client. Okay, the use case here is this could be running on a C# web server that was authenticated in some other means, and so you pass an authenticated user to this to a web page running this software, and this software would then create a corresponding user in CloudCard for your local user, and then authenticate them and forward them right into CloudCard, so they didn't have to have an extra authentication. So that's kind of the idea. If you've got questions on that, feel free to reach out to us at support@onlinephotosubmission.com. Okay, enough ado. Let's move forward with just a quick demo of the software. Okay, so the first thing that you're going to need to do to, obviously you'll download it, and I'm not going to go through all that. I'm not going to show you how to set things up in Visual Studio Code or in Visual Studio, whatever works for you. That's outside the scope of this. But go into CloudCard, log yourself in. Now, the person that you want to log in here should be an office level user. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm using an admin level user. You'll see features that, but I recommend that you use an office level user for this, not a director. Okay, so you log in as your office level user, inspect the page. Okay, I promise I will make an easier way to get authentication tokens, but once you inspect the page, go to application. It's underneath here usually, and then session storage for this website. I'm using test right now, and grab the access token. So copy that guy out of there. Don't worry, I will delete this access token immediately after this video. You can close that, you don't need it anymore. So I got my access token in your project. I went ahead and committed the VS Code, .vs Code folder. I didn't even know any better than to not, which I probably shouldn't have. But anyway, paste your authentication token there. So you could also just pass it in if you're running this on the command line. You could pass it in as a command line argument. These are the command line arguments. So you've got the base URL of the CloudCard instance that you're working against, the authentication token that you just took from the session storage after logging in, an email address. This is optional, but the email address for the user that you're working with. If you're creating a new user, this is absolutely required. The ID number of the user that you're working with, this would be like their student ID. And then if you have custom fields, you can list those off right here. Okay, this organization is set up with a single custom field called name. Go look at the people. So a single custom field called name. So we've added that here. So we're creating a Blinken. So let's go ahead and just hit F5 and run this and watch it run through. So we'll see a user pop up here. Actually, we'll have to navigate away and navigate back. So runs through. Okay, there we go. it's all done, go back to the people page, and I see this new user, Bacon at test.edu, was created with the name Abe Lincoln and the ID number and the user or the email address that we specified. Okay, this particular client does not currently send out an invitation email to the users. This creates a user silently. And so let's talk about how you would then get the user into the system. Okay, so this user has been created. And if you'll notice that several things actually happened. So let's go to the program .cs. Okay, it exercised a few different things. First, it checked to see if CloudCard was up. Then it created, create or update the person. So it created the person. Then it went and got a login link for that person, and then it found the person. So there's a few different use cases that are kind of outlined in this example. And so if you want to know how to do those things, you kind of just follow the breadcrumb trail in from here to take one of those actions. Looking in CloudCard service.cs. Again, don't hate my C# code. I'm sure it's terrible. I'm sure I've broken every convention in the book. I'm a Java programmer, so I did my best to respect the conventions. But driving on in here, we create an HTTP client, and I set up the basic, configuration for accessing CloudCard with that client. And then we've got a couple of, the find person method, which calls a get against the people API on CloudCard, and then the get link and the create or update person both actually call the same endpoint, just in slightly different ways. Which is the put endpoint for the people resource. So it actually, if it's a new person, it puts the person at that location. It actually inserts them right there. If it's updating a person, it updates the person with that identifier. And if it is just needs to get a login link, it grabs a link for that person. The login link actually, creating a login link for a person actually does an update against the person. So that's why this is all being done essentially with the put HTTP method. For more information on REST methods and why we use put rather than post or get, definitely refer to something else that's outside the scope of this conversation. So let's take a look at the resources and what's coming back that you have access to. The person resource here has the person, the email, or has the email address and the identifier. Those are the only two pieces of information that we are particularly concerned with, but you could add, there's more that comes back in the JSON that could be deserialized. So just create a more complex person object if you want to deserialize that. For more information on what the JSON is going to look like that you get back, refer to the CloudCard documentation online, which I will link in the description of this video. Then there's the person response. This is the actual response that comes back from when you do an update against a person. So this comes back and it has the person in the user field. Now I just called it here, but it has a person and it has a link, has the login link for that person. So again, take a look at the CloudCard documentation online for more information about different options and things like that you could send. So that's why we're using when we call over here, when we call put person to CloudCard, and we send the identifier and then some JSON, or in the case of just getting the link, we send empty JSON. But when we call this method, it's returning that person response object. Okay, and then the person response object either gets sent back if I do a create or update, so I have both the person and the login link, or if I'm just trying to get the link, it just grabs that link for me. So this is really more a convenience method than anything else to help the API make a little more sense. So hopefully that is a good high-level explanation of this client and how it works. Like I said, take a look at the, actually I'll just go here. Take a look at the documentation for CloudCard that's online in our Confluence for more about all the different API calls that are possible, etc., etc. If you've got questions or comments, feel free to reach out to support@onlinephotosubmission.com. Thanks. Have a great day.